Brian, thanks for joining us. Let me start there. What was it about Caleb Williams that you said, he is worthy of a deeper dive and a profile?
Yeah, great to be with you guys, first of all. And well, we found Caleb interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, we are at Esquire. We're obviously writing about men in America, men of all different kinds. We were going to do a big sports package, the Mavericks of Sports, and we were looking for the right cover subject for that. And to me, Caleb was interesting for a few different reasons. I mean, first of all, a guy who has had incredible success, Heisman Trophy winner, number one pick, came into the NFL and kind of, had a up and down first year. So this sort of the jury is out on him. He's got to prove himself, but also all the off the field stuff he does, the interest he has. He's kind of a different kind of character from an NFL quarterback, very confident. The confidence to launch an investment firm before he's even played his first snap in the NFL, the confidence to paint his nails and show himself, show his real personality. So all that came together, and I think there is a tension, especially for Bears fans to see what's really going to happen with him on the field and with the team. And I think all that together, just really makes him a really compelling character.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of the most recent covers of athletes chosen. It's the big guys. Mm-hmm. It's Paul Skeens. It's Donovan Mitchell.
It's LeBron.
It's Dan Hurley. Lindsey Vonn. These are people who are. I'm not going to say they're bigger than the game, but they're big. They're bigger out. They have a presence outside of the game. They're more than just the game. Maybe that's what I'm searching for. And I brought up this point earlier that I think it does matter to have a cool quarterback. I think it does. It's the Bears haven't had a guy that Esquire magazine would even consider since Jim McMahon 40 years ago. And I think while at the end of the day, what he does or doesn't do on the football field is going to write the story for him in terms of his Bears career, that the story of Caleb Williams is being told outside of Chicago. And I think that plays into why you chose him and the things you just alluded to. But when you go to pick a subject to write about or spend time about or travel to Europe with, that story to being told outside of the city, I feel like matters almost more than the people who are fans of Caleb Williams in the city he plays in.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that I'm sure a lot of Bears fans would say they mostly care what he does on the field, but looking at him as a character and somebody that we were interested in and somebody who's going to be the face of a franchise, I think the stuff that you're alluding to is all part of the picture. I mean, just the fact that we went to Copenhagen to photograph him, for me to interview him. He was living in Copenhagen for part of the off season because his girlfriend lives in Copenhagen, but also, he's a guy who's very interested in European culture, in fashion, in food, in different perspectives around the world. He's not somebody who's just, he does live and breathe football and has been since he was a kid, but that's not all he lives and breathes. He's also really interested in all kinds of subjects in business. And I think, if he can pull that off, if he can be successful as an investor and a business person off the field, while at the same time leading the franchise and being a top NFL quarterback, that will be an incredible story.
Brian O'Keefe, the executive editor of Esquire, joins us here on The Score to talk about the brilliant piece on Caleb Williams in Esquire. You need to check it out, find it online, go pick up the magazine itself with Caleb. He also looks great.
Yeah.
And the photographs are amazing. The clothes are outstanding. When you sat down with him, Brian, what struck you as unique about him?
Well, he has a quiet confidence about him. I definitely felt that when I was sitting with him and talking. He's kind of low key unless something stirs his competitive juices a little bit, and then you can see the competitor. Anytime he talked about a game situation, or we did a video sit down where there was like a quiz involved, and you could see him like getting competitive. But I just think like the breadth of his interest to be such a young guy, and this is another reason that we were really interested in Caleb, is he was really in that first generation of athletes, college football players in particular, who benefited from the NIL change in college football. And he was able to earn millions of dollars in endorsements as a college player. He was essentially a professional player for his last, couple of years in college. And I think that, these guys who are coming out now, they've had a different experience in terms of dealing with business people, getting paid large amounts of money. So they can come into the league with a more sophisticated sort of appreciation for what's available to them off the field, as opposed to just trying to grind and, impress the coaches.
Considering your background, being the editor-in-chief of Fortune, what's it like for you now to talk with athletes, whether it doesn't have to just be Caleb, although you're right about where college athletics is going and how it changes things. But what's it like for you now to talk with athletes and understand that it's about the brand that they are as well as the player that they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's tough to imagine being that age and being able to have the discipline to do everything, playing quarterback in the NFL. And this is another reason I was really interested in doing this story myself and writing about Caleb. Basically, half the teams in the NFL are always looking for a quarterback. There's only about a third of the teams in the NFL, maybe slightly more, who feel really good about their quarterback situation at any given time. So there's really only about maybe 12 to 14 guys on planet Earth at any one given time who the league would look and say, yeah, that guy is definitely a winning quarterback in the NFL. So, it's really tough to be that guy. You can be an incredible athlete, have an incredible arm, you look like an All-American, and you still can't make it in the NFL. It's just such an elite set of talents. So somebody trying to do that and have the confidence to deal with serious business people and have the discipline to try to maintain, their business matters over here and their football matters over here and do it all at a high level. I mean, it's just an unbelievable, real task for anybody.
I spent the bulk of my television career storytelling and doing documentaries and trying to basically, travel and humanize people in a way that most of the time they are put on a pedestal for because they're larger than life, whether it's the money that puts them there, what they're doing for a living, etc. Very few times do we actually get a peek behind the curtain. The preparation that goes into an interview like this, I know, is long and arduous, and you're trying to pick up every rock to make sure no stone goes unturned, but you always find out a new nugget, no matter what. And I'm sure you've had this happen 1,000 times in your career. What is something about Caleb Williams that you learned that really struck you in a way that you're like, man, this guy, if this all checks out, Chicago and the Bears are going to have something?
Well, I mean, to go back to what we said before, the fact that he was spending time in Copenhagen, lurking around in coffee shops and studying football on his iPad, that was surprising to start with. Talking to some of his coaches and teammates from the past, talking to the strength coach at USC, who was the strength coach at Oklahoma when he got there, and then they all moved to USC together. That was really interesting too, because before Caleb became the starter, he developed this routine with Benny Wiley, the strength coach, of doing a full workout on game days in the morning, and that was his way of staying intense and staying ready. And we're talking about a guy, who was a true freshman coming in, and he didn't waste much time before he got his way onto the field. But I think also, that goes back to him when he was 10 years old, telling his dad he wants to be the best quarterback in the world, and his dad saying, okay, I'm taking you at your word, and we're going to develop the plan to do that. And basically Caleb was doing two-a-days when he was 11, 12, 13 years old, getting up at 5:30 in the morning, going and doing a workout, going to school, and then going back and doing another workout, and his dad held him to that. There's a famous example of that kind of thing from the past, Todd Marinovich, for the old school folks who remember him.
Yeah, the buttermilk on the calves and all that stuff. It was crazy.
there was actually a famous Esquire article about him and how he didn't work out. I mean, he was great for a while, but like, he wasn't able to maintain any balance in his life. And Caleb had a version of that experience and he's this, seemingly super well adjusted, confident guy who's talking to me about playing 19 more years in the NFL and not setting any caps on his goals for what he wants to achieve, and still at the same time being a business guy. Like, that's an interesting guy. That doesn't mean he's going to succeed in the NFL at the highest level, but somebody who can be that measured and well-rounded in what they're doing is, that's unusual.
He opened up to you, and he's been pretty transparent with us here in Chicago. I don't have any complaints, but him opening up to how much it hurt. Like, we knew it hurt when they lost that Washington game, but him opening up to you about how much it hurt and how it impacted him. What did you take away from him telling you about how he tried to rebuild himself after that?
Yeah, that was a really interesting moment in our conversation. I mean, he's a guy who's gotten some attention for letting his emotions show and gotten some criticism probably in some corners. There's some people, he had a game in college where he cried and after they lost, and some people were criticizing him for that. But he's confident in who he is. And, I think that goes back to just his burning desire to win. I think that, if he's not winning, if he wasn't able to deliver a win for his team and for himself and for the fans, that's going to cut to his core. But he also, any rookie coming into the NFL, being a starting quarterback right away, that's an incredible challenge. And I do think, like, all the losing, as he said, like, he's never lost that much. And that wore down on him. And he did say, I cried some tears. I went home and I was just beaten down physically, mentally, losing a bunch of games. One detail that he told me that didn't end up in the story was he drew some inspiration in that moment from Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is one of his heroes. And he was thinking about the moment in Kobe's career when Kobe, was asked if he had hit a wall. And he said, no, but it doesn't matter if I did. So what if I did? And that was kind of like the mindset that Caleb wanted to have. It doesn't matter if I'm worn down. And he definitely felt like he rallied and the team rallied a little bit at the end of the season. And of course, they ended, with the win over Green Bay, which was a way to go out on a high note.
A Kobe comp for Caleb Williams is it's special. And I might be asking an unfair question here, and I know that, but after what you just experienced and wrote about and gave us a real true profile look behind the curtain of Caleb Williams after year one with the Bears, if I said it's 2035 and we are looking at Caleb Williams and we're doing it based off of your just one trip with him and your get to know you feature, what do you think his Bears career looks like?
That is a tough question. It's really hard to go out on a limb because, I cited some statistics in the story about the number of quarterbacks, the percentage of quarterbacks that actually make it, even first round draft pick quarterbacks who actually become playoff winning quarterbacks. I will say, he obviously has the athletic ability. He's shown it at every level until now. You talk to him. I talked to DJ Moore. He had a lot of confidence in him. Lincoln Riley has obviously a lot of confidence in him, having coached him at USC. And I see a lot of determination there. He's got the ability. It's just very hard to, predict anything with any kind of degree of accuracy. I think, he's going to be really committed to it. Despite these other things he's got going on off the field, like, he definitely comes across as a competitor. I just, if you look even a year before, Bryce Young was drafted number 1, and the Panthers put him behind a terrible offensive line, and he looked like a terrible quarterback. And C.J. Stroud looked like the guy. He led his team to the playoffs as a rookie. And then Caleb's year, the Bears were obviously better than the Panthers, but they didn't have a great offensive line. It's tough to look good behind behind a bad offensive line. and Jaden Daniels looked like the guy. So these things can change really quickly. I think that Caleb has every opportunity and the ability, though, to, when you're looking back at it 10 years from now, to be a guy who led the Bears to the playoffs a few times. And, who knows?
Brian, it's a brilliant piece. Thank you so much for jumping on with us. And honestly, if you ever do another sports profile, you just want people to know about it, don't hesitate to hit us up because your work is fantastic.
Thanks so much. It's great to talk with you guys.
That is Brian O'Keefe of Esquire.
Really good stuff.
Go read the Caleb Williams feature that he did. It is quite good, and you'll find out a lot more about your quarterback.